Many of the Democratic candidates are in Nevada today ahead of tomorrow night's debate and this Saturday's caucus. And one contender who's not on the ballot in the Silver State is going to appear on the debate stage. Michael Bloomberg qualified after a new national poll put him in second place with 19%. That puts him just behind Bernie Sanders, who has 31% nationally. These 6 candidates will now face off tomorrow night in Las Vegas. Our Skylar Henry has more on what to expect.
Mike Bloomberg will face his opponents for the first time when he takes the debate stage in Las Vegas tomorrow night. The former New York City mayor qualified for the debate because a new national poll shows him running second behind Bernie Sanders. CBS News has learned Sanders' aides are concerned Bloomberg is the senator's most formidable opponent, and Sanders is now targeting Bloomberg in his stump speech.
Mr. Bloomberg, you are certainly not going to win when you have a record in New York City that included racist policies like stop and frisk.
Bloomberg isn't competing in early state contests and won't be on the ballot until the March 3rd Super Tuesday primaries. Some polls show that shaping up as a Sanders-Bloomberg showdown. Virginia votes on Super Tuesday, and in a new state poll, the two are tied with 22% each. Joe Biden is not far behind at 18%. But with Sanders focused on Bloomberg, other Democratic White House hopefuls are taking shots at Sanders ahead of the Nevada caucuses, the next state to vote. Pete Buttigieg went after Sanders' Medicare for All plan while campaigning in northern Nevada.
The overall bill for what he's promising is 50. This is a $25 trillion hole. That's bigger than the entire United States economy. I believe I have a responsibility as a candidate to level with you about what it's going to take to pay for the things I'm saying we ought to do.
It's the last day of early voting in Nevada before the caucuses on Saturday.
We had a lot of people early vote in the last few days. There have been some long lines, mainly because the check-in process is quite slow.
There are concerns about a repeat of what happened in Iowa. The Nevada Democratic Party has scrapped its plans to use an app to tally votes. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
So let's go deep with Caitlin Huey-Burns in Las Vegas and Miriam Elder here with me on set. Caitlin is a CBSN political reporter and Miriam is a BuzzFeed political reporter covering Trump 2020. Caitlin, first question for you. This is the first time that Bloomberg is going to appear on the debate stage alongside his 2020 Democratic rivals. And he's not even on the ballot in the state. How significant is this?
Yeah. This is hugely significant, and I think you could argue this is a turning point in the Democratic primary so far. We've had lots and lots of debates, as you know, but this is the first time we're actually getting a new character, so that's something to note. Michael Bloomberg is also going into this debate tomorrow night with a huge target on his back. Skylar mentioned the attacks from Bernie Sanders. He's also been getting them from Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. They've all been focused on the amount of money that Bloomberg himself has been spending on this race, and it has had a positive effect for his campaign, at least until now. He's been able to blanket the airwaves. He's been able to really get his name ID up, to get his support up, especially in those Super Tuesday states. There's a new poll out of Virginia that showed him rising there. So that's really something to watch for Bloomberg. He's going to be scrutinized on his record, on past statements. The interesting thing to consider about Bloomberg is that while he's had a lot of success in the primary process so far, just being able to being able to get to this point, he hasn't been scrutinized the way that other candidates have yet. He's been operating largely behind the scenes, having lots of rallies and events at various states across the country, especially Super Tuesday states, being on air a lot, being able to really control his message. So I think that will be a dynamic that changes tomorrow night when he's up against his rivals, and they're going to be going after him and trying to gain an advantage while he seems to be the candidate to watch.
So I want to bring in Miriam to this conversation. Miriam, as Caitlin says, Bloomberg's now entering this debate stage with a target on his back. What are some of those attacks likely going to look like from his other Democratic competitors?
I think first and foremost, they will attack the fact that you have a billionaire candidate that's entered the race rather late, who has effectively bought his way onto the debate stage. You have Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who have made their entire platforms about billionaires can't rule the country and we have to think about the regular people. So I think, number one, it'll just be the fact of him being a billionaire and that being what got him onto the stage. Secondly, obviously, is his record on race.
But it wasn't that he was a billionaire that got him onto the stage. It was qualifying in the national polls, right?
Absolutely. But it was a billionaire that allowed him to buy these ads and just completely blanket the country, and Nevada in particular, in ads that raised his that raised his profile in a way that somebody without his war chest would not have been able to do.
And Caitlin, that same poll that helped Bloomberg qualify shows that Bernie Sanders actually has a double-digit lead. So what's the Sanders campaign saying going into the Nevada caucus?
Yeah, the Nevada caucus is going to really prize organization, and that's something that Bernie Sanders has going for him. It's important to note that the culinary union that is so influential here did not endorse a candidate after going after Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan. They were very critical of that. But since they didn't endorse, that could also help him as well. And it's important to note, too, that Bernie Sanders has been focused beyond Nevada and onto Super Tuesday states. He was in California just yesterday campaigning. So that shows that the campaign figures that it will do well here and has the position to be in this race for a long time. In the past couple of days, he's really been focusing his attacks on Michael Bloomberg, just yesterday saying that Michael Bloomberg has every right to participate in this election, but he has no right to actually buy this election. And so he's going after him and the money, because that really speaks to kind of a core of Bernie Sanders' campaign, which is this corrupt government system, that money is too big in politics, and this kind of really fits neatly into the frame that he's been arguing. So I would expect them to really go at it. I think something to consider for Bloomberg is that the rise of Bernie Sanders could be a good thing for him. It could allow him to kind of have this one-on-one race with Bernie Sanders and try to garner support from those in the more moderate lane of the party who are concerned about a Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket. They might be more inclined to Bloomberg. But again, that debate tomorrow night will be the first time that we see Bloomberg in that kind of setting. And he hasn't been on the debate stage in over a decade since his mayoral run.
Yes, and to follow up on that, Miriam, you know, President Trump was on Twitter today. No surprise there. I want to read to you what he wrote. He wrote, "The crooked DNC is working overtime to take the Democratic nomination away from Bernie again. Watch what happens to the superdelegates in round 2, a rigged convention." Is Sanders the candidate that Trump most wants to face?
I actually think that this tweet wasn't even about a particular candidate. I think this is part of Trump's entire approach to delegitimize the election. What he wants to do is cause chaos and maybe have voters not even trust in the results that are delivered once the primary is all said and done. I've spoken to a lot of Trump advisors, and there is a real fear about Bernie Sanders. They say that his populist...
More so than Bloomberg?
Well, you know, I spoke to them about a week ago in Iowa and New Hampshire, and really the last week is when we've seen this insane, this just, you know, monumentous surge. Absolutely. And I think that there is a lot of concern among the Trump campaign just about the money that Bloomberg has. Trump has such a lead beyond all the other Democratic candidates. He can outspend them by far, but with Bloomberg, it's a real race there.
And some of that other narrative that has worked for President Trump in his campaign, you know, out on the stump in the campaign field, talking about his success as a businessman. Obviously, Bloomberg can meet him there, meet him with the personal finances, surpass him actually with the personal finances. But if what Caitlin says actually transpires, and this becomes a two-person race between a progressive socialist on one side, Bernie Sanders, and a billionaire, once was a Republican, now a Democrat, in Michael Bloomberg, is one of those more advantageous to President Trump as a competitor? I
think probably Bernie Sanders is probably more advantageous just because Trump can double down on these attacks about socialism and kind of, you know, raise the fears that he's been trying to raise for months and months now, and simply the fact that, again, the war chest that Bloomberg comes to this with is not what Bernie Sanders comes to this with. And I think the fear among the Trump campaign is really on the spending and the organization.
And Caitlin, we've heard from Bloomberg that he's also firing back at Sanders, who has been attacking him out on the campaign trail. What is Bloomberg and the Bloomberg campaign saying about Sanders?
That's right. We saw a tweet from Bloomberg's campaign manager, Kevin Sheekey, saying that they have enough Oppo research, apparently, on Bernie Sanders to fill an entire Foxconn auditorium. So that's also a hit at Trump, of course, and a hit at Bernie Sanders, and kind of a show that, you know, what's interesting to consider about Bloomberg is that he hasn't focused on any of his rivals until this point. He's been focusing his campaign directly on Donald Trump, trying to make this kind of a general election campaign almost. Now that Bernie Sanders seems to be among his top rivals, you're seeing this back and forth between the two candidates. Again, something you'll see on the debate stage tomorrow night, and especially if Bernie Sanders does do well here in Nevada. Nevada, of course, critical for this primary process, having the caucus on Saturday, because this is the first time that these candidates will face a more diverse set of voters than they have from Iowa and New Hampshire.
And today, President Trump kicks off a 4-day West Coast trip. It includes a rally in Las Vegas on Friday, one day before the Nevada caucus. And the president also held a rally in New Hampshire last week, one day before the primary there. So, Miriam, can you help us break down President Trump's strategy?
Right now, his strategy is just, I'm here, all the attention is on me. He is going around the country, quite literally, trolling the entire Democratic Party by hosting these gigantic rallies in every state that is up for a caucus or for a primary. And what the Trump people say is, you know, the message they want to deliver to voters is, we have not forgotten about you. But the way that I really see it is, it's a trolling campaign to make sure that the attention never goes completely to the Democrats, that the eye kind of always stays on Trump.
Miriam Elder, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you both so much.